All right. So I'm Nick Hill, and sitting here with Shane Andreen, and then we are also sitting here with Battalion Chief Bridger Williams.
Bridger's just fine.
Well, perfect. Shane, you want to lead the way?
Yeah. I figured the best way to start is probably just have you give us a quick background on where you grew up, what your upbringing was like, childhood, that type of thing.
Okay, sure. I lived in the Salt Lake Valley till I was about 10 years old. And at that point, my dad worked all over the Western United States. He was a mason, worked construction in that field, from laying brick, carrying brick, block, mixing mud. And I think about the time that he retired, he ended up being like a crane operator, but hardly ever home. If I seen him, it was probably once or twice a month, just on the weekends. And it wasn't really compatible with my mom and us having a good relationship with him or having him around a lot. So she moved me, and at the time I had 3 younger sisters, still do. And we moved out to Wendover, just a small town in Nevada along I-80, hit on the Utah-Nevada border. And she opened up a daycare out there, daycare, and eventually became a preschool. They had a Head Start program out there. And maybe within a year or two of us moving out there, my mom was doing well enough that my dad moved back home with us. And I mean, I say that, and I can even see it now with my own kids, how that's affected me and them. And telling that story, I can see on your eyes like, oh man, that's kind of surprising. And I never felt like it was harmful to me in any way. Maybe it has been, but I didn't see it maybe until recently. But I seriously felt like I've hit the lottery with my parents and my upbringing. Living in Wendover, when I tell people that, they're like, oh man, I didn't even know that kids lived out there. I thought the youngest anybody was that lived out there was 21, because you have to know how to count that high to work in the casinos. But it was like the typical 1980s childhood growing up there. It was an adventure every day. Nowadays, if you don't have a Xbox or a PS5, you're kind of ostracized out there. In those days, if you didn't have a rifle and some kind of ATV, four-wheeler, motorcycle, it was the same thing. You just didn't fit in. But it really was a great upbringing. Ventures every day, camping every weekend. I couldn't even tell you how many rabbits and whatever else we shot out there, just living life. But it was good. I graduated high school out there. I played sports in high school, and when I graduated, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like, my whole goal going through high school and a couple of years after high school and in college was, I figured by now I'd be in Cooperstown. Thought I'd be in the Hall of Fame, and that was the goal.
Same.
And it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So to get me to the point that I am right now, a lot of the things that I enjoyed about my life when I was younger is what was very attractive and appealing to me about being in the fire service, just hanging out with my buddies and going on these adventures and helping people out. So when I discovered the fire service, or how I discovered the fire service, when I came home from playing baseball and college, I think it was just the end of the season. So it was in the springtime, and a lot of my buddies, like, if you grew up in Wendover, at least in the time, you stayed there. There wasn't many people. I graduated in a class of 23 people in my high school, and I think there may have been at the time maybe 2 or 3 people that left Wendover at the time. Most of the people stick around there. I mean, you can, within a couple years of graduating high school, back then, it's probably even more so now, you could get a job making $65,000 just throwing cards in the casino. So it was pretty appealing, especially for some of those kids whose family immigrated here from Mexico or South. That's a lot of money, and their families relied on them to do that. So most of them stayed there. And when I came home, a lot of my buddies that were still there, they were volunteering on the Wendover City Fire Department. And at the time, the casinos had gambling junkets that would fly in and out from all over the country. And the FAA required them to have ARF, firefighters, certified firefighters, they're on standby before departure, after departure, and arrivals, and for so long after arrivals. So it was great money. I was hanging out with my buddies, and it was a lot like playing baseball and going to college and just hanging out with your buddies. And so I decided I want to do that. I certified in that, and we came in, me and the guys on the fire department, we came into Salt Lake and we got the certification. We did 40 hours, I think, may have been 80 hours out in Wendover at one of the casinos in the convention center. We went through the Utah Fire Rescue Academy certification process. And then we came in here and we fought fire out of the international airports, ARF props out there. And I can remember man, this is great. A lot of fun. And there was this guy there, and I ran into him a couple times early on in my career, and I just man, that's the guy that I wanted to emulate. His name was Otto Visser, and he worked for Salt Lake City. And at the time, I think he had 20, 25 years on, but he was Dutch and a giant. He's probably 6'8", 6'9", and 270 pounds. He was the prototype of what young kids think a firefighter should be. Since then, I know he's retired, but his son followed his dad's legacy, and he's a firefighter in Salt Lake City now. So that was kind of a cool thing when I reconnected with him on a mutual aid fire with Salt Lake City and told him that story. He's like, "Oh yeah," he goes, "I love my dad. It was he had the same thoughts that I did. I want to follow in those footsteps." But I got the certification, went back out to Wendover and worked some shifts out there, and that's when it really hit me. Man, I could really do that. Not in Wendover, the town, it didn't even have a full-time firefighter there at the time. So I came into Salt Lake Valley, went to school down in Orem, went to the UFRA's Fire Academy. It's now evolved into what the RCA is today, but did all the fire certs and EMT class, and that was probably when I first started, that was the spring of 96, and then fall of 97, because I'd had some previous credit. I graduated with, I just had the associate's degree in fire science, and that was May or June, and I was testing everywhere like everybody does. I mean, everywhere in Nevada. We did some Colorado, Utah, and that fall, so 4 or 5 months after I was done, I got picked up by West Valley, and I felt pretty fortunate because a lot of the guys I went through UFRA's class with, they were still looking for jobs. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys that was in that process with me, and we travel all over trying to get a job. A lot of the guys probably know him as DA. I think he retired for a little bit and then came back onto the job. Salt Lake City hired him back after he sat out his year, and I don't think he had any intentions coming back, but just a great man, and they wanted him to come back, so they offered him the position, and he came back. But that was the caliber of guys that I was running around with before I even had a career started. And if you know anything about him and the guys that came out around that time, I was really fortunate to be with that group. But that's kind of what got me started in the fire service. A little bit about my childhood and just the beginning steps of where I'm at today.
So when you were in Wendover, you just had the ARF certifications?
Yeah, the program back then, there was no Fire 1 or Fire 2 needed.
No EMT, no nothing? Nothing.
I didn't get that until probably 6-7 months after I had the ARF certification. So when I realized, after doing the ARF, when I realized man, I want to make a career out of this, that's when I came into Salt Lake and started going down to UFRA's RCA.
Mm-hmm. How old were you at that point?
When I started that program, I was 22. And then when I graduated and started working for West Valley, I just turned 23.
Okay. Did you know anything about West Valley at the time? Or were you kind of just, like you said, throwing your name anywhere and see where it's stuck?
I had no idea. Nowadays, when people come in and they do the interview, like, yeah, we know you got 6 stations, and Chief Evans, he likes Thousand Island salad dressing and his steak medium. Like, they know everything.
Yeah.
They research stuff. They know the specialty programs we have. Like, I was a moron. I mean, still am a moron, but they know everything about it. I was not prepared that way at all. And I took tests all over, and I feel like I was the same person in all these interviews, interviewed the exact same way. And there was like West Valley, in the group, I was number 4 out of the higher class I was in. I think McBride was 1, Briley was 2, and I think Quillen was 3, and I was 4. And there were other departments that I tested on, like, yeah, you're 72 or 111, and down in Clark County it was like 123. The ones I can remember off the top of my head.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When I didn't know anything about West Valley either, because I had just moved here when I got hired, and I remember trying to research the department, and I remember looking on the website, and it hadn't been updated in a long time, and I thought that I was prepared after looking at that, and it said like there's 3 stations or 4 stations, and turns out there was 6, and I I feel like an idiot.
Yeah, that doesn't happen that often these days. I mean, I've sat in on a couple hundred interviews, probably 400 or 500 interviews at this point, and kids are dialed. They come in and they're way more prepared than what I was. And I think that says something about the job and where kids are at now. And these times, if they know what they want to do that young, they're usually doing the work to get there. And at least in those initial steps, we filter out a bunch as we go through those processes and the physical agility, and then further on into some Chiefs interviews and stuff. But I think kids are just more knowledgeable now. We've got just different ways that they can source the information.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that people nowadays specifically seek out West Valley?
Yeah, I think that they do. I think West Valley had more of a appeal years and years ago. I remember when I first got on, like I said, I didn't know what I had. I just knew that I had a fire job and still was holding on to some baseball dreams, but I was happy with where I was at. And the longer and longer I was here, I mean, probably the first 2 or 3 years, it was still kind of growing on me. And then probably year 3, 4, finally, like, this is the place that I want to be. And it was mostly because everybody else was saying, like, man, I wish I had what you had. I wish I was there. And it's when you're in the middle of it and don't know, you don't know that that's where you want to be, but you're going on all these fun calls. We're busy. And we're talking today, like, yeah, man, we were busy. We're probably only running, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 more calls right now than we were back when I got hired. And we had 3 stations when I got hired. Mm-hmm. And so we are busy. I'm not discounting that. I know we're getting crushed all the time, but it was really busy back then. I remember Briley and I were working out of the same station when we were on probation, and we had to keep these journals. There's a lot of different things that probationary firefighters have to do during probationary year, but one of them we had to do is keep track of all the medicals, all the fires, and it was not uncommon to have 18, 19, 20 calls in a 24-hour period. Back then, we worked the Kelly schedule where we worked a day on, a day off, a day on, a day off, a day on, and then 4 days off. So a little bit different schedule, but we got wrecked. But it was still a great time. And when you're that young, you don't even really recognize the hazard of what that brings.
Yeah. What do you attribute that to? Just being as busy as you were back then?
Well, I think a lot of it is we just didn't have the staffing that we do now. The call volume wasn't as great then as it is now, but the staffing percentage-wise was less than half of what it is now. Mm-hmm. I don't think we even started picking up more guys probably until we opened up Station 75, because we had 1, 2s, and 3s when I got hired. We opened up 4s like 4 years after I got hired, but we didn't hire any additional guys at that point because we had 2 separate companies running out of 73. We had an engine company and a ladder company out of there. So they just split those companies when they opened up 74s. We hired a few more guys when we did 75s, just added to our target staffing level. And then 76, we hired a few more then. But if you guys remember, the amount of guys that we had off until last year was just 5 guys per shift. And it was always 5 guys per shift for as long as I can remember. And maybe it was 3 or 4 when I first got hired, but as long as I can remember, it was 5 guys. So we probably doubled our department size and only added 1 more spot for vacation or PTO, whatever it is. So it's just staffing was the biggest reason. And then just like every other city in the valley or every other city in the country, the call volume is just growing.
Yeah.
There's more need out there with higher population and then just society.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't run ambos until what, 05?
Yeah, it was 05.
So were you guys, how'd that work? Because was that private ambulance service staying in quarters, or were they just on call, roaming the streets?
No, the ambulance service we used back then was Gold Cross, and they did not stay in our stations. They just staged around the city. One time, I think we had 3 or 4 ambulances staged, and we knew where they were at. I like to think that we treated them pretty good, because there were sometimes they would come, they would know, at least on the shift that I was on, we would show up to work at 06:30. You better have the rigs checked off and ready to go by 7:15, or you were getting chewed out by the senior firefighter or the rest of the crew that wanted to go PT. And we would go PT over there were some churches in our response area that we'd have keys to. We'd go in and play and we'd play basketball for a couple hours. It was great. And I use the term basketball loosely because there were some pretty wild games. But we'd have some of those Gold Cross guys come in and work with us and play games and stuff with us, and we ended up hiring a bunch of them. So I like to think that they didn't live with us in quarters, but we had a pretty good relationship with all those guys that came along. And when we ended up starting our own ambulance service, we actually hired some of those guys that we trained with and played those games with and responded with, even though they were part of the private ambulance company.
Yeah. That's cool to hear. I've heard some horror stories about private ambulance company guys getting treated terribly by the fire crews.
Yeah, maybe it's in my own mind, but I like to think that even like playing baseball and stuff, I've seen a lot of like the hazing and stuff. And I get that that's kind of like just the growing pains or rite of passage and stuff like that. But I remember getting it myself. I never felt offended or like, oh man, I'm a victim and I'm getting bullied. It was just kind of the thing, but I always tried to treat people with respect no matter where they were at. I don't know if it always comes across that way, because I do like to get after somebody, but usually when they need it and talking about a new guy. But I think for the most part, West Valley is pretty well known for not being a bunch of a-holes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what year did you get hired?
I got hired in 97, fall of 97.
97. And you had gone through UFRA's Fire Academy, went to EMT school. When did you go to medic school?
I went to medic school in 2000. And at the time, it was more of like a competition. And throughout my career, I didn't always take the promotional test because I wanted that next step. It wasn't about the money or the desire to be in charge or that next rank. It was about the competition. Steve Briley was my nemesis throughout my career until he left. Like, he was always like 1 and 2 with me. And I was taking those tests because I wanted to compete. I wanted to beat him. Mm-hmm. And he went to paramedic school right before I did, the class before I did. And I'm like, well, that's my next step. So I took that step. At the time we went up to Weber State. Mm-hmm. And I went through paramedic school with Ron Lay and Joe White, BJ White's dad. It was a great experience. I loved it. I remember what year it was only because that fall when I was there was the year that the Yankees and Mets played in the World Series together. Yep. Subway Series.
The World Series where Piazza broke his bat and Clemens threw it back at him.
Yeah, he needs to chill out.
So you went to medic school in 2000. How did that work? Was that an automatic promotion? Was that a pay scale? Like some departments, it's parallel with engineer, or has it always been the way it is now?
Yeah, it's always been the way that it's just a specialty. So kind of like with hazmat or tech rescue, if you have a desire to do that, back then there wasn't a testing process. You raised your hand and you just went.
Yeah.
And so now it's not like that. There's a whole testing process, and guys want to go to paramedic school. So we're pretty fortunate that our department will send the amount of people that they do, but there's still just not enough spots. I mean, as you know, there's guys that go privately all the time. But back then it wasn't as much interest. Our paramedic program was fairly new. I think when I went, I was probably the 4th or 5th class that we sent up to Weber. So it wasn't a huge draw then like it is now.
And if I remember correctly, you said you lived up there while you were
Yeah, we lived up there. There was a tower, a residential tower up there, and Ron Lay had his own room, and Joe White and I shared a room, but it was great. It was, it's just like going to college and getting paid for it. I would wake up early in the morning and go down with my meal ticket and eat lunch. Or eat breakfast. It was great. And then go to class all day, 8 to 4 or whatever, go to the gym, at the gym for a couple hours and come back and study. And it was the life.
Yeah.
Living up there with those guys. And at the time, Weber was catering specific to professional firefighters, and there were no private students in that class. So all the guys had some time on the job. I probably had the least amount of time of anybody in my class on the job. And it was just a great experience. I can't imagine going through some of the schools with the stories I've heard about the paramedic programs now. Not to say anything bad about them. The requirements are they're steeper. Both, and the ones that I know about in Weber and down at EVU where we're sending our guys now.
Yeah. So since 2000, how has EMS changed over the years? Quite a bit.
Yeah, I think specifically in West Valley, the big one that we've already talked about is just the transport. I can remember when we first started talking about getting ambulances, I was all for it. I liked the change. I like the idea of having more guys in the station. And there were some people that we didn't do laterals back prior to this, but there were guys that worked up in Ogden, and they have ambulances up there, and they do the inner facilities, and they did them back then. And like, this sucks. This is opening up a Pandora's box, and we're never going to be able to put the genie in that back in the lamp on this. But that was a big change for us. We had to hire a bunch of guys. I didn't feel much of the growing pains in that. I was just there and along for the ride, and I enjoyed all of it. Probably some of the bigger changes that we've made, I think the biggest changes we've made has probably been within the last 5-6 years with us starting up our own critical care paramedic programs, bringing that higher level of care to the patients, whether it was designed to transport patients from one facility to another, or one hospital to another, but our citizens are benefiting from that as well, because the critical care paramedics, if they're needed, as you guys both know, guys want to help. They want to perform the skills that they've been taught, and they're going on calls, whether they're jumping calls or they're being asked to go. A lot of our citizens and people who are just passing through are benefiting from that CCP program. Just recently, we started the whole blood program. Chief Howard has been an integral part in helping our department implement that with cooperation with IMC and our attorneys, our chief, just getting that up and rolling. And I don't know all the statistics, but I do believe that we're the first in the state, and probably within the first 100 across the country that has a program like that up and going. I think that says a lot about our reputation within the medical field in the Salt Lake Valley, with those medical control docs that see how we perform, see what kind of care we're providing patients when we drop them off to them. I don't think they're given that responsibility and opportunity to just anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it's pretty cool what Chief Howard has done for us with the whole blood program.
Yeah, he got Employee of the Year today for the city.
Really?
Yeah.
Well deserved.
He is super funny. Like you see the guy and you're like, man, how does this guy do everything he does? Because he's good at almost everything. I hate him for it, but he's so cool and so humble. When he got called out to receive his award today, he showed up, and you know how he likes the Buddy the Elf costume and all those things. He showed up as the Grinch.
Did he really?
Yeah, and I didn't even know he was there, like, because I'm sitting by all the fire guys that had showed up, and there's like at least a table, maybe 2 tables of us sitting there, and I'd heard through the grapevine that he won this and we should be there to support him, but he wasn't there. I'm like, man, typical firefighter fashion, don't show up to your own party. And when they announced his name, he came out, and you didn't know it was him. He had the Grinch mask on and everything. I'm like, oh, okay, this has got to be him. It's like a 6'5" Grinch. But he's done some great things for our department, and you're right, that award is well deserved.
Yeah. So what would you say, since you started in 97, has kept you in West Valley for your career?
I think probably like the first 15 years, it was just, I was trying to hit retirement. And I mean, that was probably the biggest driver. Maybe not the biggest, but that was one of the main drivers. But probably after 10 years or so, a lot of the old guard was retiring. I can remember when we first offered retirement incentives for guys to leave, guys that I grew up with, raised me as a young man and into a firefighter. I'm talking like Ron Rigby and Lee Monson, Craig Jepson, Dale Van Tussenbrook. And I hate that I started naming names because I'm not going to name all the ones that had a huge impact on me. Rob Knighton and Joe Walls. But when they all started leaving, I was like, oh my gosh, this freaking sucks. It's like losing part of your family. And rode that out for the first, I don't know, couple months. And then I realized that these young guys that have been here, they're starting to step up and filling those roles. It's just like the void was being filled with guys that were just as competent, just as valuable, and meant just as much to me. And that's kind of where it started in my mind. Like the guys that we have here in West Valley are great. And maybe I'm biased because this is where I work, but I work a lot with the other agencies in the Valley, whether it's Recruit Academy or responding on bomb calls or just rubbing shoulders with them on mutual aid. I feel like, and I told you guys this when you were going through your respective Recruit Academies, I feel like West Valley has way more than our fair share of good guys. And I'm not saying that other departments don't have great guys, because they do. I just feel like I can walk into any one of our stations and be like, yeah, all these guys are guys that I would love to go out and have dinners with their families and have them meet my families and go on vacations together. I don't know that that's the same across the board. In fact, I know it's not, because when I have conversations with people during Recruit Academies, other cadre that are coming in, and they always mention it, like, man, you guys got a great thing going on over here. And I know we do. So that's probably the biggest thing that's kept me here. And to be honest, I've also had kind of a one-off unique career with my participation on the bomb squad. When I first heard about it, Monty Quillen, we'd been on the job for a couple years. This is before the Olympics happened. And he's like, hey man, I need you to do some shift trades for me. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I just need some shift trades. And he needed like 2 months worth of shift trades. And I couldn't work all of them, but I worked a lot of them. I wasn't married at the time. I was young. And back then I didn't want to leave the job. On my days off, I was like sad. I didn't want to get back to work. So I worked a ton during these fall months. And Monty comes back and he's tan and happy. And I'm like, dude, what in the heck? Where have you been? He's like, oh, I went down to the Maldives and I was doing this contract work with my old master chief. And it's like, man, I need to get involved in that. Let me show me the path. And he's like, man, it's going to be really difficult going through as public safety, trying to get all this stuff, but this is the path. And I just started working on it. That started, the official first steps that I took was probably it was in the fall of 2002. By the time I had my complete packet put together and there was a spot open for me down at the Hazardous Devices School in Huntsville, it was 6 years later. And during that time, I got married. I had my first son, and my wife at the time was pregnant with my second child. And that was just the steps that I had to take to get there. And then just through that process, going through that, I learned a lot of things in that community, and it's provided a lot of opportunities for me to work and travel all over the world. And I've taken advantage of that, and it's just been a great add to my career.
Yeah. Where's it for your favorite places you've been?
And that's a tough question, hard to answer. There's so many places that I've been that I love. But the thing about going on these trips, they all sound romantic. I could tell you, like, yeah, I went to the Maldives. I went on these safaris in Africa. Thailand is great. But for me, I would go to these places and I'd be alone. And I mean, I'd have my buddies and stuff there that I would work with. But when I didn't have my family, my wife and my kids with me, I may as well have been in hell. It was hell on earth being in these tropical and beautiful places and not having them there and experiencing that with them. Honestly, I would have rather been in Iraq living in a Connex box than going over there and doing those things. I would have been getting paid a lot more money, and I wouldn't be looking out across this sunset across the ocean wishing that loved ones were there, other than the bros that are doing bro things.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that be tough. You're in a beautiful place, yet you have this almost gloom over you, seeing your family.
Yeah, that's right. And just like you guys know too, when it sounds great, oh man, you guys work 2 days on and 4 days off. Yeah, but you know what? Murphy doesn't show up on your 4 day. He shows up at the worst times. I could be 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 miles away. That's when Murphy's showing up at my house with the water heater going out or one of the kids getting sick. Just those kind of things happen always when you're gone and on shift. So, but when you're off, you get to go home and take care of that. Yeah, replace your water heater and try to fix stuff that can't be fixed.
Can you move that just a little bit closer to you?
Yeah. What, damn. I'm really glad that you're good at editing, because I forgot what I was going to say next. I had a question related to what you were just talking about.
I'm not even going to edit that out. It's fine.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are.
The overseas
No.
trips, contracting,
No.
Murphy.
No. Fuck Murphy.
That's right.
Talking about the dudes in West Valley. I've heard a lot of people say that have worked elsewhere. West Valley's the only fire job I've had, and I'm very, very fortunate to have gotten hired there out the gate. But even dudes who have worked elsewhere, they say the same thing. Like, the culture in West Valley and the dudes are top tier and superior to anywhere else that they've worked.
Yeah, and I think that that's a testament to the guys that have come before us and kind of set that culture in place. And I feel like we're just kind of carrying it on in the work that we do and the professionalism that we have. And I'm not saying that everybody's is right where they need to be right this second in their skills, but all of them are really good. And when it comes down to it, they're going to get the job done. And it may not be in a way that is traditional or other departments would approve of, but we're getting the job done. And I just feel like there's not a problem that if one of our crews showed up, that it's not going to be solved, and the people that we're serving are happy with the result.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think part of it too is you kind of have that bonding through suffering a little bit, because we are so hammered and dealing with shit calls and shit places, and it's not glamorous what we do by any means. But on top of that, right, like I always tell people, had I gotten started anywhere else before West Valley, I would have left the fire service years ago. I would have been like, this is stupid. I'm bored. I'm going to go find something else to do, And I think a big part of that is, like, I look at local departments like here, Or if I was doing like the dog and pony PR bullshit day to day, I'm just not, that's not for me. I can't do like the go sit in a parade, shine the truck, make sure it's all nice and pretty and wave to the, kiss the baby, shake hands, whatever. That's just not me.
Well, I think that, again, like you said, I probably would have been gone too if it wasn't for that. But the guys, you show up in that shared suffering, it means a lot. And I don't know that I could walk away and not feel like I was having an arm amputated. Like there's so many good times that I've had here and a lot of memories that it'd be hard to walk away. And sure, it had its grips on me within a couple of years for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's when I have the most fun at the station, is like when we are getting wrecked on shift and everybody's talking shit and doing the job that they are trained to do and utilizing the skills that they've put in hours and hours and hours of training and schooling for. Like we show up to the station and immediately everybody's talking shit and it's going to be a good 48.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it any other way. I don't know what the other departments are like, but I kind of have I'm biased. I think that it's just better here. And there's guys too that all the guys that we have in West Valley, for the most part, are Cooperstown in my book. But there's those guys that and without saying many names, but Gerber, when that guy's on your crew, it could be 2:00 in the morning. You have just got your junk kicked in all night long. You've got like 3 hours of sleep because one of the chiefs has a meeting for you or someplace you got to be at 8:00 in the morning. So you're going to get a short amount of sleep, but Gerber's out there keeping you happy, laughing, just talking about stuff, talking trash about everybody there. Nobody's off limits. And it's just all part of that shared suffering. He's suffering just as much as you are, but he's bringing up, and I think we have a lot of guys just like that. I'm sure you guys have guys in your mind that fit that bill for sure.
Absolutely. I'm fortunate to work with Rolf quite a bit, and he's the exact same way. I've never seen that dude in a bad mood.
Yeah.
He's always hyping everybody up no matter what's going on. It's pretty great.
When we interviewed him to get hired, he was probably going for like maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And I knew right away, like what one of his roles would be at the station. And it was just that.
Yeah.
Cause he's got a story for everything.
Yeah.
When he first started, he needed to put the brakes on a little bit, but I think he's kind of tempered that quite a bit. But the dude is awesome, and everybody loves working with him.
Yeah,
he loves working with him.
I have a couple buddies outside of the job that have asked me recently about what the process is of getting into the fire service, and like, what classes should I get? What studying should I do beforehand? I'm like, dude, honestly, a lot of the hiring process here is like, are you going to be a cool dude to hang out with at the station for 48 hours for 25 years?
Well, I think that's the biggest part of the job, because we can teach monkeys to do this job. It's not hard. I mean, if you don't have grit and you don't have a work ethic, then it's really hard. But you've got to be able to live life and not be super awkward in the stations and just assimilate to whatever that crew is. I mean, be yourself, but if you're one of those, the dude, guys are going to adapt to you just as much as you are them. And it's a great situation, a great position to get in, but it's not for everybody. Mm-hmm. So when they're talking to me, I'll just kind of read the room a little bit and determine like, okay, yeah, this guy would be great. And I'm not the be all end all. I can tell you right now, when Bozen first interviewed with us, I'm like, this guy is never going to make it. and Beichner, after he went in and interviewed with Beichner, he's like, I love this guy. He was great. I'm like, man, how did I cross this up? And you know him now, like the dude is a stud. We did some training yesterday, and he climbed up the ladder, pulled down. We had an aerial operation where we were rescuing somebody off of the 5th story over at the Fairborn Station parking structure. He climbed up that ladder 2 or 3 times for whatever reason. I can't remember, but I'm sure it was supposed to happen. Nothing but efficiency with him. And he brings that mannequin down and manhandles it more than some of these younger guys were doing. He's just a good dude. And I read that completely wrong. So I think hiring is one of the hardest things in any position, but especially in the fire service. And having that strong work ethic, being able to assimilate with the fire crew. But another thing too that I've always thought and said is, most of the stuff that makes you a great fireman isn't what we teach you in fire training or even in the firehouse. It's stuff that you learned in kindergarten, stuff that your parents taught you, your grandparents, and those people that helped you when you were a young kid in kindergarten. You just got to be a trustful and honest person. And if you can't be that person, you're going to have a really hard time in the fire service. Guys will sniff that out. And as you know, we will eat our own. If you don't belong, we'll eat you, and it just gets spit out. And it's not a place that you want to be or comfortable. We've seen guys and they were great dudes, but guys that come here and don't fit in, and for whatever reason, they have a hard time being themselves, and they move on. And some of those guys, they've gone to different departments and assimilated, and they're like, man, the greatest thing that ever happened to me was go to West Valley and realize, like, okay, this isn't my place, but the fire service is, and learned a bunch of good lessons. And now they're thriving in other fire departments. I get phone calls from candidates that left our recruit academy, not just from West Valley, but other agencies that participate in our recruit academy. They tell me all the time, like, man, thanks for showing me some of those ways and putting me on a path and being a reference. That I'll tell them all the time as they're walking out, like, if you need anything, just let me know, and reach back. And we've helped some guys with that. I know a lot of the other cadre have done the same thing as well.
Mm-hmm. What have been some of the struggles that you've faced as a fireman, or just in this profession in general?
Man, I think on the professional side, I think it's just the job, kind of the stuff that we've talked about already. When you're younger, you don't realize it's a slow burn on the late nights, early mornings, up all night. When you're young, you don't realize the toll that that's taking on you. I think it messes with you physically and mentally. But when you're young, that physical aspect, you hardly tell. Or if you do, you just push through it. And the effects on it aren't as bad as they are when you turn 40, in my case, 50. It's a lot steeper, but the mental aspect too adds up. And stuff and calls that didn't bother me when they happened 10, 15 years ago, I'll drive by the places now down in Chesterfield or over in Fives area, over in Twos in the Orchard area. Like, there's calls, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that sucked. And it just kind of plays over in your head mentally. I think that physical exhaustion and that mental fatigue has played a huge role in my life in the past 5-6 years, to where it's affected me negatively. That's probably been one of the hardest part, but by far the hardest part is the toll that it can take on families. Like, I'm sure all of you guys, if it hasn't affected you yet, buckle up, because I know it's going to affect everybody. This job, you touch it, it's going to touch you back, and it's going to leave a mark and take its pound of flesh from you. I know that it's taken a toll on my kids. I know it's taken a toll on my ex-wife with my job. I'm grateful that they supported me for as long as they did, and I don't blame them one bit for the path that we're both on now. I feel like now every day with my youngest son, my oldest son, he lives with me now, and I'm grateful every day that I get to go home and spend some time with him. And it's not always great. I mean, he's 19 and we don't always see eye to eye, but it's having this realization has made me feel like I have a chance to be a better father now, after having that realization and understanding how the job has affected me. And he's even mentioned, like, Dad, you're just a completely different guy now than you were 4 or 5 years ago. But it's that perspective of realizing how that job messes with you. So I think the hardest part about this job is just that, how it affects you and your family. Unless, I mean, they talk about there being tools and stuff that you can do to, I've heard the other day that from a guy from city is like, yeah, it's my transition day. I'm like, transition day? Like, what in the heck is that? He's like, the day that you come off shift and you get to go home and take a nap, and your family doesn't bother you till like 2 or 3 o'clock. And then maybe you go to the gym, maybe you get on your mountain bike and go for a bike ride. I'm like, transition day for me when I was your age, I'd get in the truck and drive out to Wendover and pick up some stuff from my dad because I was coming back into town and being a courier basically for the casinos out there and heading back. That was my transition day. There was no rest, no mountain bike rides. That probably would have served me a lot better. But just utilizing those tools and probably just being more aware of the effects that it has on you and trying to mitigate those as much as possible.
I definitely have a transition day.
Do you have a transition day?
Yeah. I'd never like labeled it like that, but like for sure, like the day I come off shift, and it's just like a general understanding, like we're here around my house with my family. It's just like dad's home. It's been 48, whether it's been in a long 48 or a short 48. It's just like, take some time,
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I don't know. It's hard to, I think when I was younger, it was easy to have that switch on and off, right? And then getting older, kids, just like more responsibilities as your family grows, as life goes on, it's just like, it's like you just find moments where you're like, I need to stop, take a breath, or like, I'm feeling that knot in my back, or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's like, it's just your body or your mind speaking to you and you're just not listening.
Yeah, I ignored it.
Yeah.
No doubt I ignored it.
I still catch myself ignoring it.
I can tell you there's been many times where I'd worked callbacks, and I've worked, the job I was just talking about out in Wendover was a job that I worked as a courier for some casinos out there. My dad was my boss for a long time. And I don't know about you guys, but working for family is a really bad idea, and not because of the nepotism type thing where you might get favoritism. For me, it was never that. I know I worked for my grandmother and I worked for my dad, and I felt more responsible to them to do the best job. And I think they relied on me a lot more and didn't treat me the same as their other employees. Like, what do you mean you've worked 8 hours? You still got like 5 or 6 to go because you're not even halfway done yet. And that was my transition day. And also, like, growing up with, you mentioned kids and stuff and the demands of that. At the end of the day, if your paycheck ran out, you had to work. And in the fire service, that's probably the biggest, I don't know what the right term on this is. This is the biggest negative about the job is most firefighters have to have a part-time job to make ends meet and provide for their families. And I got to the point where the part-time job, the contracting, it was a necessity to provide for the lifestyle that I'd been giving my family and my kids. And you remember, like, during COVID, when a lot of those part-time jobs dried up, the contracting world died. I remember being in Bangladesh when things were really starting to hit bad in the States, and the shutdown hadn't happened yet. But when we flew home, half the team flew home back to the States and the other half flew to Amman, Jordan. And by the time we landed, they had already called the team that was in Jordan. They hadn't even landed in Jordan yet. I think they were on a layover in Paris or something like that. And they redirected them to come home, and the work was done. It was gone. It was my favorite time because I didn't have to go to work and do all those collateral assignments. I could stay home, and my kids were doing all the homeschool stuff, and I loved it. I got to spend a couple hours each day with my kids doing homework, and I just loved that time. And they were like, man, we're running out of money. Do you think you can call state and see if you can get a contracting job? I didn't like working that much. I mean, those jobs were fun, but I hated being away from home. And but it's easy to get caught up in that, needing to make the next dollar and make sure your kids get to Disneyland and make sure you're driving a nice SUV and stuff like that. But it's not worth it. But that's one of the things that the job almost demands of you at some point if you're not really careful.
Mm-hmm. What aspect of your career did you realize that the job was taking negative effects on you and your family?
Man, I bet it was a lot earlier than what I started taking more precautions or stopped participating in a lot of those things. I recognized it probably 15 years onto the job. And I don't know, this probably be a better question for my kids, like how soon they noticed that there were some effects being taken. But it was probably 15 years on the job. So early, like 2013, 2014, I could feel it, but just like we talked about when Nick was talking, I ignored it. And I'm like, oh, I can push through this. It was like, you got to be not macho to like, oh, I'm better than everybody else. It was more like, man, I can just keep pushing through, and I've done it for so long. But it just, that wheel just gets going faster and faster, and you can't keep up. It was probably not until 1920, where I'm like, yeah, I can't do this. When I got promoted to Battalion Chief, I stopped contracting, and I was no longer going out 7-8 weeks a year. And it was probably even more than that. It might have been double that. But I stopped going out, and I might have went out 2 or 3 weeks a year. And in the past 3 years, I've probably only gone out a handful of times. But I just made sure that there were jobs worth going out for as well. But I noticed it probably a little bit more than 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but didn't actually put any plans into place to where I could mitigate some of that until 5 or 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I wish I would have done it a lot sooner, just because I think it would have had a better effect for my kids. There would have been things that we had to do without, but I think I know I would have enjoyed being around them a lot more, and I think that it would have been better for them as well.
Do you think it's more of an individual responsibility, or I guess it's kind of a black and white question because the answer is both, but how much is it more of an individual responsibility versus what can we do as an organization to support guys in that aspect?
Yeah, I think it is individual, but just like an addict, the addict has to want to change before you can do anything to affect any change for them. But when you say organization, what are you talking about? Helping facilitate? Are you talking about the fire department? Are you talking about the city? Are you talking about a union or association? What are you thinking?
Man, all of it. Yeah.
I don't think the cities or the departments are set up to help us in an appropriate way. Like I don't know that the cities or the departments understand everything that we do and what all of our day-to-day is like, and understand the psychology behind us going on all these calls and how it affects us mentally without sleep. Everybody can say that they understand it and like, oh yeah, I've heard about it, or yeah, I took some courses on it, and maybe even got a degree in psychology or sociology or something like that. And I don't want to say that that doesn't help you get a better understanding, but you can't fully understand it until you've lived it. And then when you live it, you're like, oh crap. And even when you've lived it, sometimes you don't realize it until you've taken a step away. When I went to training in 2016, after I got made, I started sleeping better and all that. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been going down the wrong way. I need to exit here and turn back and get going the right direction. And if it wasn't for that change of the sleep pattern and not going on the calls and all that, probably would still been going down the same path. And not, if you would have told me like, hey man, you got to turn it off. I'm like, screw you, man. I'm fine. But seeing that, I think, is the big thing for each one of us. I think it's becoming more and more, everybody's becoming more and more aware. We're talking about it a lot more, and we talk about it in Recruit Academy. We talk about it in the peer support. It's talked about around the stations. So I think that awareness is good. But again, I don't think the city or the department is set up in a way to help us. I know we've got the therapist that we can go talk to now. And I mean, I just give a plug for her. If you have any questions at all, just go in and say hi to her. Just kind of tell her about your day and what you're feeling, even if it's just physically, not even talking about mentally. I bet she can lead you in a path where you're going to find some changes, or at least give you some steps to take to maybe find a better path to be on, for just to be healthier. But I think for us to, as a department, to get better and make sure guys aren't going down that path, first step is awareness. But I also think that there's got to be probably a greater buy-in from more firefighters. And I'm not saying just West Valley, but maybe valley-wide, where we have some kind of plan to help people understand that we aren't what our job is. We're not our titles. We're not the patch that we wear. We're We're dudes that do a lot of really unique things, and that's special. It doesn't mean we're not special if we're not leaning into it and grinding all the time. We can still do all that, but we need to have people there that help us recognize where we're misstepping and help us put us on the right path to where we're mentally healthy, physically healthy for our families, our kids, the people who care about us, our friends. All of us are going to need help at some point. All of us are going to need support. And I think that support the answer is within us. I just don't know how to organize it and get us all to a place where we're going to buy into it. But I think the answer is to ourselves. And I think Drew Griffin, with some of the stuff that he's been doing with the organization that he's put together, that may be an avenue we need to explore to help support. But 100%, I believe that the answer for what we're talking about is within. It's not, we can't expect it from some third party that maybe doesn't know much about the fire service. You can't expect it from the city or the fire department. And I'm not saying they don't want to help. I just don't think that that's the answer. They know how to help us specifically. We can't rely on them exclusively. It's got to be something we come up with.
I agree. I think I've told people before, like the hardest thing is being able to recognize that something's up, like within yourself, like it's one thing for someone else to point it out to you, and you usually brush it off or take it as an insult, or you get defensive or whatever.
Yeah.
But especially because it is a slow burn, right? It's not something, typically speaking, it's not a single incident. It's a multi-years burnout and exhaustion, or just the right recipe of things going wrong in your life. And it's not necessarily even just the job. It's a combination of the job, your family life, your finances, your where you live, or even how you spend your free time, or how healthy you are or unhealthy. It's like, and that's a hard thing to have individual responsibility at that level, especially for like in a profession that people have a tendency, and I'm not excluded from this, to work hard and play hard. You know what I mean? And finding balance isn't exactly our strong suit, to say the least.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ego involved in that too. Like all those things that you mentioned, when you're successful or perceived success is there on the outside, you may look successful to everybody around you, and that feels good for your ego. But on the inside, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not, you're getting eaten up. You're burning yourself down.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to recognize those changes in other people than it is yourself.
Yeah. I don't look in the mirror very often.
Yeah.
I'd like to circle back around. Because it's easy to like talk about all the positives, but I'd also like to talk about some of the negatives, like especially from your perspective, being of one that you've been in the service for nearly 30 years now, but also you've been in the training division, you left the training division, and now you're back. And I'm really curious about your perspective on the quality of people that we're hiring, and just like this new generation coming in, and whether or not you think we're headed in the right direction, or if it's just like maybe we get bad eggs every now and then, and that's just par for the course, or what do you think?
Man, that's a great question. So when I first was put in the training division back in 2016, your class was the first class that I was the lead instructor on, and I had a ton of help with Chief Hall. At the time, I think he was a senior firefighter. Maybe he was a critical care paramedic. And I would say that having him in there with me at that time was one of the greatest times of my career. I loved working with him. I loved working with the recruits a lot more than what I had anticipated. They asked me which position I wanted to go. At the time, Chief Peters was promoted the same time as me. And he's like, well, his argument for staying on shift is this. What's your argument for staying on shift? And I'm like, yeah, man, I don't know. Like, put me where you think I should be, and I'll just fill a hole. I'm totally fine with it. But it wasn't my first option. But when I got there, and after it was probably 6 months, and working with Hall and then working with you guys in that new group, I'm like, yeah, this is the right place. And I feel like divine intervention putting me in there at that time. The candidates are 100%, maybe not 100%, but probably 50% different. And I'll explain that in a minute. But in your class, you had you and Bozen and TJ Moser, Sam Pasquale. At the time, Sam wasn't what he is now. Sam is a freaking beast. I love that dude. And just a bunch of great guys in that whole academy. When it was going on, there was just dudes. And I didn't think anything about it. Like, oh, of course they're going to be this. And the next camp, we had Garmin in there and a bunch of really good dudes. Remington Wilson came along in those camps. And then when I got out, it was just time. I think Chief Beichner asked if I'd go in and be the battalion chief on B shift. And I remember my kids talking to me around that time. I can't remember which, I think it was Jade. She's like, yeah, Dad, I don't think you're a real firefighter anymore. Like, you're just doing this. You're not even going on the calls. And that really like, oh yeah, here we go. And it's that thing, like the ego, like, okay, here we go. I'm going to jump right back into it. And I love that going back in there. It was just a different environment, but I was out of it from mid 2019. And then I got put back in beginning of 2024 on like a hybrid thing, but they're full time. And so I was out for a little over 4 years, and I kind of felt like I was moving backwards, going from training and then to shift work and then back to training. Like, man, I've been here before. I feel like I should have progressed and moved on. But at the time, it was something that I felt like I needed to do to be able to spend more time, or at least be available for my kids. And that was the main driving factor for me to go back in there. But when we started doing the recruit academies again, there was a stark difference. And that's where I'm saying like 50%. If back then, if you want, just for numbers and math's sake, say 100% of the guys are like, okay, these guys are all going to make it through. Nobody ever did. Back then, the attrition rate was about 30%, 35%. Now it's pretty roughly the same, but the quality of the candidate at the end of the camp, they're still passing all the same standard as before, but it's not the same performance. Still meeting the standard, but not the same performance. Where most guys, if the standard was 80%, back in your guys' time in that first stint that I was in there, guys weren't just happy with 80%. They were hitting 90, 95%. Now it's somewhere around the 80%, 80, 85. There's still some that are up high where it was with you guys in 90, 95%, but I would say only less than half of those candidates that we're getting are performing at that high level, way above the standard. I think we're still on the right track. I think the results that we're getting with some of the candidates is society. I think we're becoming way more soft and more weak as a society. The young men and even the young girls that we're getting are not as fit as they were before. They're not as focused, not as distracted. Their buy-in isn't there, not as committed. I will tell you though, in this last camp that we had 4 females in there. This most females we've ever had in a camp. But Shane, you went through with Katie Arnis, and she's freaking great. Like, she ran circles around more than half the guys that were in your camp when you guys were in camp together. We had another girl in this last camp, Mallory Tyler, and she reminded me so much of Katie. So I know that the quality is there in both female and the male, because we had a bunch of dudes in this last camp. I could name a bunch that would fit in that same mold with you guys. I mean, I don't want to insult you in case they turn out to be turds, but I think the candidates are still there. I just don't think that they're as many, or they don't realize they haven't grown into themselves. We'll look at some dudes and just be like, yeah, I don't know. In a couple years, they turn into their studs. I mean, Sam Pasquale, I mentioned him a few minutes ago. The guy is a freaking rock star. He was not a rock star during Recruit Academy. He was scared to death of Chief Hall, and he will tell you, and Hall will tell you the same thing. But as soon as he got out of there and out on the floor, he was a rock star. So like I said, I still think we're on the right path. I think we just need to have a little bit more patience. And again, that ego with us, like, if he can't cut it right now, cut him loose. We'll do without. But I know that's not the answer. The answer is giving him a little bit more patience, a little bit more time, and that may be uncomfortable and that may not be the cool thing to do, but I know that's the answer. And a lot of hard work with those guys. It's not just patience and not doing anything. There's patience and working with them. Bavasi, I think there's a candidate that he worked with that I thought before he got moved to your guys' crew, you and Bavasi and Katie and BJ, I think the guy was out the door. I think he was within a couple weeks of being let go. And when he got over to your guys' crew, I 100% believe that he was saved by you guys. His job is due to all you guys putting in the work with him and then having the patience. Just like I said, there's still good candidates out there. It just takes a lot more work and patience.
Yeah. The dude you're speaking of is one of my favorite dudes to work with now. He's a stud. He's so fun.
I love hearing that.
Yeah. He's awesome.
Yeah. And that's the best thing about this job is to see those comeback stories or people coming from something that you didn't believe they could be, or they didn't believe they could be, but you saw it in them, either one of those, and then having them thrive. It's the coolest thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the senior firefighter's role, is to train the new guys. And like, if they fail, has a lot to do with you.
Yeah.
And if they pass it, I mean, that's your job, is to put in that hard work to get them to where they need to be, and to hold that standard.
That's right.
Yeah, I've always had the belief that if someone fails on probation, that there's a really good possibility it wasn't their fault, and that it's those who were training them, you know?
But like you said, unfortunately, some people just don't have it.
Yes.
Like, the job isn't for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily their fault, but that does need to be recognized.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember a couple of years ago, somebody's asked me about my kids and like, hey, would you ever recommend them being firemen? And I thought about it for a minute, and I'm just thinking like, yeah, man, that would be so cool. Especially if I don't think that I'm going to be around if my kids decide to be firemen. But I thought about like, yeah, that'd be cool. And then it like hit me like, and it was right around this time where I'm making these changes and like not wanting to work as much and realizing the effects that I'm like, hell no, I don't want to. The first thing I'm going to do is try to talk them out of it. Like, do not become a fireman. Like, I don't care, man. Go be a stripper or do something else. Just don't be a fireman. Do something else. And I'm totally joking. Do not do that. But
Probably make a lot more money.
Well, do something that's going to make you some money first, but be happy. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I would want for anybody in any job that they're doing, but especially my kids, is to go and do a job that you love. And honestly, if I can talk you out of it, you don't have what it takes anyway. You don't want it that bad. And I say that to guys that call me and like, hey, how is it? And I give them all the bads. They know the goods. They just want me to confirm with it. They know the pros of the job. They think they do because they watch Chicago Fire and all these other things. But you tell them the cons and see if they like it. And that's why in the Recruit Academy, I feel like the training division is the gateway to even let guys come in and try to be a firefighter. Just because you graduate from the Recruit Academy doesn't mean that you're going to have a career, or it's an invitation to walk through the threshold of the fire station and continue to prove that you belong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, go back to what you were saying about working with family. When I got out of high school, I was working for my dad. He was an electrician. And my entire childhood, his goal was for me to work for him, learn the business, and then take it over and then run it. And I started to do that and very, very quickly realized that was not for me, you know. Mainly because I didn't enjoy working for my dad, but I just couldn't work a normal job.
Yeah.
And then, I went into the Marines because I subconsciously knew that I needed to prove myself, you know. And then after I got out, I needed that again and hopped in the fire service, and West Valley is exactly what I needed.
Yeah. I remember both of you guys coming in, and first days on the job, I remember Nick had like shin splints. And he's like hobbling around trying to finish the PT every morning. Do you remember this?
Vaguely.
Yeah, you were like handicapped, and there I can't remember who else. Oh, it was Pickett. There was a kid in there named Pickett, and he was whining his stuff. And I'm like, can this guy not see Nick over here just like struggling and trying to finish the thing? And he was complaining. And then I remember in your camp, it seemed like you were scared every single day, and not on the PT, like you were crushing PT and doing all the great stuff on that. But in the classroom stuff, I remember like on test day, you're just nervous as all get out. And
yeah, for sure.
It's not for everybody, but it's a great job.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say we can do better to recruit?
Oh man, I think the biggest thing is, first off, is give everybody a chance. When I was in the recruit or in the training, the first time I was in there, Chief Evans and I had a bet, because Salt Lake City just held a test, and I can't remember how many guys he said they had. It was, I'm just throwing this number out there, and I could be completely wrong, but I think he said like, oh yeah, they only had like 250 people show up. We're going to be lucky to have 150. And I'm like, I bet we get 200. He's like, no way. I was like, I'll bet you $50 right now we get 200 people to show up to our test. He's like, all right. So I made up flyers all on my own, didn't ask HR or whoever, and I put them in all the VOSs around, all of the MMA gyms around, took them to all the like announcement boards at the community college and whatever campus was at, up to the U, hit Hillfield, like at their commissary, same down at Camp Williams, airport number 2, just hitting everywhere, that all the UFRA, anybody who had an EMT school, and put in there. And we ended up having like, I can't remember the exact number, but I know that I blew the number that he said we couldn't hit out of the water. I think that we can do a lot better at canvassing and throwing the net out to get more candidates. I believe we just recently take some steps in this next hiring process, at least for the written test, that I think we're going to be able to cast a broader net. And for me, and I think this is, I'm a slower learner, so I'm thinking that it's already been thought of with Chief Beichner and Chief Owensby and Evans and everybody else who's involved in that hiring process during the interviews and stuff, is I've got to practice what I preach and give some guys a little bit more of an opportunity and believe in them more, other than just like, yeah, you're done. There's still going to be the cream that rises to the top during those interviews and that whole filtering process to get them to Recruit Academy. But just throwing a guy out because he doesn't look the part, or he answered a question dumb, that's not the solution. There's plenty of guys that we've hired in the last two or three camps, or have been hired with our agency or any of those agencies that have been through our camp. Like, yeah, this guy's not going to make it. But with a lot of work from Captain White and Captain Byrne and all the other cadres that are there, these guys come out of camp and they're some of the best guys. And I'm talking guys from Draper, from Murray, South Salt Lake, West Jordan, just West, our own department. There's some good dudes that I never would have thought it. So I think the biggest part is casting a bigger net, and then we've got to do better work as a department in training these guys up.
Mm-hmm. Which makes me beg the question, do you think we set the bar too low? Like the buy-in's too low, you know what I mean? Because like nowadays, you just need a driver's license, and you just have to be enrolled in an EMT basic course. You don't even have to have your certification yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see what you're saying on that. I believe we loosened that up for the EMT portion of that, just to we didn't want to miss somebody who was going to have their EMT before that our camp ended. So that's why it stopped. Remington is one of those guys that we were able to capture because of that. I remember he took his EMT basic test like week 7 of that camp. And I know there's been 2 or 3, but off the top of my head, I can't remember all of them that did that. And so our department definitely benefited from that. I don't know that our standard is too low, because back in it's probably around 2013, 14, that time frame, we used to also require all the fire certs.
Right.
And that went away too. And I think we picked up, I bet half the camps, or out of all the camps that we do know, I would bet that half the candidates that show up don't have certs. Did you have certs when you came?
No.
You?
I was in the middle of an academy.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Bosun,
yeah.
We had to teach him what a freaking hydrant wrench was,
right, and
how to put it on top of the bonnet of the fire hydrant. I don't think that may have, what you're saying, like decreased the standard a little bit or minimize that entry, but I don't think it hurts us as far as the candidates that we're getting. It's the selection process, I think, is the bigger thing that we need to pay attention to.
Has it ever been considered to include ride-alongs in the hiring process?
Yeah, we've talked about it. The biggest obstacle, I think, for that is just getting enough people and how do you identify all those people that you want to get there? I mean, we're interviewing 50 to 70 people for a list. This last group that we did, I think we interviewed 40, 45, but the group before that we interviewed 70. I don't know if on both of those lists, we're probably going to be touching 20, 25 down on those lists. And at that point, I don't know how we would get all those people in on doing ride-alongs with all the stuff we've got going on with all the probationary fire. There's some companies right now that have 2 probationary firefighters on a 5-handed crew.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that makes it really difficult. We've got paramedic students that are coming in, and I'm sensitive to what the training division and sometimes even administration is putting on you guys and the crews as far as like, hey, we've got this guy right along. We need you to assist them. Like, fetch, man, you guys we're already busy, and burdening them with one more thing, I don't know that it's appropriate. One thing I do like is, seems like we've got a lot more teeth and been a lot more aggressive on identifying those candidates that just may not make it. And then once they're under the radar, we're giving them a performance improvement plan while they're on probation and making sure that they're with crews that can help them. But then if they don't make their probationary final test, then they're more likely to let them go now than they ever have been. It sucks because we're down the road and we've lost a guy and invested all that time in him. But I see what you're saying on wanting to get him in on ride-alongs. I just don't know how feasible it is with how many other moving parts we have on those crews.
Yeah, that makes sense. My thought process is get a better gauge of who they are in a ride-along than you do with an interview.
Yeah,
I agree, and I realize I don't speak for everybody, but you're also not the first one to bring up that idea, and I've heard many people feel the same way. They're like, yeah, like bring them in, like let them see the job for what it is, because I think that's the hard part, right? It's like you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. You want to cast a wide net, and like I'll back up. Like for me, getting into the fire service, it was like coming out of the military. I was like, okay, I have military experience, but that's it. So I went to college. I chased my degree. I made sure I even got into an academy, even though I got hired halfway through. Got my EMT taken care of. And it was like I was still going through all these steps that took years. You know what I mean? Whereas now, someone can graduate high school and the next month have a job, which is like crazy. But then all of a sudden, if they get into the job, realizing, oh, I got to work 60 hours a week. Oh, I got to get up 3, 4, 5 times a night. You know what? Maybe the same for me. And now, but they don't figure that out until they're 6, 7, 8 months into the job, when somebody could have hired someone else. But that's where it's like, you're kind of, it's hard because you get a lot of guys on the floor that go, man, we got a lot of new guys, and they come in very green. And I don't just mean skill-wise, certification-wise, right? Like that's one thing. Like you said, you can teach a monkey to do this job. It's not that hard. It's the medicine side is a whole different conversation, especially the further you get into your career. But besides the point, right? Like especially because you're working with a crew, you're not by yourself. But the hard part is like you could have all these guys on the floor that could be trying to better themselves with higher echelon stuff. Like we could be working on ICS, we could be working on guys acting in more and training more for higher level things and testing process and so on and so forth, right? But then, like you said, but we got 2 new guys. And so now we got to work on, this is how we run a code, or this is what an innovation is and why we do it. This is entitled and why we do it. Or this is, let's go throw ladders for 2 hours before noon on day 1, when it's like, man, we could be doing so many other things, but instead we keep getting stuck and we keep repeating these same basic cycles. And that's not a terrible thing, but it does beg the question, are we being held back a little bit?
Yeah, without rehashing everything you just said, I would agree with what you're saying. There's definitely parts in our testing cycle that could be improved. My thoughts initially, and this has been expressed by a lot of the guys in staff meeting, we probably need to test every time we do a recruit academy, because some of the candidates that you struggle, I'm not saying anything against guys that come right out of high school. We've had some guys that knock it out of the park in that, but that's more the exception than the rule. It does take more time to do a test or 2 tests per year. Obviously, it's double the time, but the candidates that seem to struggle, they're usually on the second tier of that only test that we've done the whole year. And that's where we see a lot of those people struggle. So one of the things I think we can clean up that, and where maybe you have 2 recruits, 2 probationary firefighters on your crew, but maybe if they're both from that top tier of that only test that we do that year, then, or that for that class, then I think that would probably improve some of that. It's just more planning and time that needs to be put in place. But I think that effort is something that we owe to our department, to the administration, and to the guys on the floor, more importantly to me.
Yeah. It's a tough challenge. I don't speak lightly of it, because I realize that, I don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
But it is just like, you see back to before, right? Like you see the positives, there's a lot of positives, but there's also negatives. And I don't want to like paint like it's all bad or like it's all roses, but just more, how can we continue to improve? Because that's I think the hardest part about the fire service is the fact, at the end of the day, I always tell people you're double fucked. You're blue collar, and you're a government employee. and on top of that, in this state specifically, like the last thing they want to do is invest money into the existing infrastructure, and we are a part of that infrastructure. That requires a lot of capital, not only to maintain but to grow. And society that we serve, or the community that we serve, and the growth of that community is definitely outpacing the growth of our department. So it's, like I said, it's a tough challenge, and we all see the good things that are coming. Like we start the BLS rescue, and like what that could evolve into, whether or not we add another, whether or not we have a ALS rescue, and how that starts intertwining with critical care responses. And like, there's a lot of cool things that can come from it, but obviously it takes time.
It's going to take some time and capital. I think those are the 2 biggest barriers to entry on everything in the fire service and government work.
Yeah.
But we're taking a step right now. So hopefully that does turn into something, and it's the guys, I think, that are going to be able to push it harder than even our own administration.
Yeah, definitely.
What would you say gives you the most sense of purpose outside of the job? Like, who are you outside of the fire department?
Man, that's a great question. And I think that's the biggest downfall of guys in the fire services. It's easy to
identify
what your job is. Yeah. It's easy to become your job. And I hate that and I've known this and thought about it for a decade or longer. Like even when I'm at the station, but for sure when I'm off shift, if someone that comes up and is like, "Hey Chief, how are you?" It drives me crazy, just because that's not who I want to be. I want to be, hey, this is Cash's dad, or this is Jade's dad, or this is Beck's dad. That's what I want to be. And I feel like with Cash and circumstances that are going on right now, that's not who I am, but that's who I want to be. And I know with Cash, I'm rebuilding that, and it's becoming better and better. And I don't want to be a firefighter. If I could find a better way to separate other than just spending more time with him and family and friends. Those are the things that gives me the most purpose now. And I'll be the first to tell you, I lost track because of some of those needs that the job makes you have, is like the part-time jobs and stuff like that. And I'm not making an excuse. I'm just saying that was the reality of my life. And now I value those relationships. I still value all the relationships inside the fire department. I know that I wouldn't be what I am without those, or even maybe be here without those relationships. But my family over the past couple of years have become so more important to me than they were before, and more than what I thought I had. I have a great family I knew that with my parents, but I've got 3 younger sisters, and I've leaned heavily on those guys. I want to be a good brother. I want to be a good son, and hopefully someday a good husband, and again, and a good father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, can be pretty difficult to not identify with the job. I've gotten a lot better over the last few years realizing that. But I mean, going back to the military, like when you're in the Marines, that's fucking what you are.
Yeah.
You know? Like 24/7, you're a Marine. And then,
I still consider myself more Marine than I ever been a firefighter.
But I mean, I think, like you said, it takes so much to be competent at this job. Like I want to be the best fireman I can be. I want to be the best medic that I can be. And you put all that time and effort into it, and you're like, fuck, like what else am I?
Yeah.
That's pretty hard to come to grips with sometimes. It's like, oh fuck, like I'm that's just my job. Like it's my passion. It's what I love doing, and I want to be the best that I possibly can be. But there's more to it than just that.
Yeah, I know you hit it right on the head there with, like, if you want to be really good at it, you've got to invest a lot of your personal time and money, and that's where it can take over you, and it becomes more of who you are instead of what you do. And there's definitely a cost there in that. Mm-hmm. And especially in West Valley, like, I don't know how it is in any other department, so maybe it's not especially in West Valley, but in West Valley, if you want to go and do a class, like you guys are taking time off, spending some of your own money, and a lot of those classes, I could tell you a lot of different classes that I've gone through related to the fire service or my collateral assignment as a bomb tech. I used my own time, I used my own money. I went through the underwater maritime bomb tech program. I bought all of my own kit, and it was $10,000, $50,000. And luckily at the time, my ex-wife and I, we had a business where we were sourcing first aid kits to military organizations around the world and State Department. And I had some stuff left over from that where we just didn't sell it, and we closed down the business. And during COVID, I just started unloading all that on eBay, or guys that knew I had it. I was outfitting some PSD for people up in Park City and Camas and that. And that's where I got the money to do all that. But it requires a lot of personal time and money. So it's hard not to let that become who you are, because if you want to be good, it's going to, like I said, if you're touching that, it's going to touch you back, and it's going to take its pound of flesh. The good thing about it, both of you guys are medics. I tell all the recruits and everybody, like, you take advantage of every training opportunity that you can here in this job. I would have never guessed that the signatures that I forged to be able to go to post the first time, or some of this, and Evans knows about these now, but he didn't then. Some of the other signatures I've done working jobs with the ATF now and the FBI, I wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't taken advantage of those training opportunities. And there was no clear path, like, hey, you do this and this is going to happen. It's like, hey, I'm going to do this because I think this is the steps that I need to take to have a more fulfilling career. But all those things are what lead you down that path of, hey, I'm a fireman, and I wake up in the morning, I'm waking up as a fireman. I'm not waking up as a husband or a dad. So it's a slippery slope.
Yeah. Do you feel fulfilled?
Man, professionally, yes. Personally, maybe not so much. I think I'm getting back there now. Probably until, I don't know, probably 5 years ago, I did personally, I felt fulfilled, but I could see my my oldest son hurting. And that's what really started to make me struggle. And I tell you, there were times where I hated getting out of bed just because man, how am I going to help him? What am I going to do? And I think the hardest thing on the planet is to see one of your children struggle and not knowing for sure the clear or the best path to even help them. I was paralyzed with indecision, and I'm starting to see some progress not some, but a lot of progress with my oldest son. And that's what is fulfilling me personally. And if I can continue to help him and get him to a place where he can be what he wants to be and he's happy, then that's when I know that I'm doing what I want to do.
Mm-hmm. What do you want to do after the job?
Man, continue to do what I've just been talking about. I want to be, I can go and get a job and do whatever. I can become a contractor. There's jobs more now that I wouldn't have to travel overseas. I could stay in country. I could stay here locally. And with retirement benefit, we're fortunate to have the retirement benefit that we do. So I could stay here and do that and be the husband that I want to be the father to my kids that I want to be. At the end of the day, that's what I want to be. I want to be a dad. Mm-hmm. I want to be a husband and do those things. The cool guy stuff that's there, that doesn't even motivate me anymore. Now it's just a paycheck.
Yep.
Nice. That's all I got.
Yeah. I think, is there anything else you'd like to?
No, I think you've beat it up.
Okay.
Okay. Well, Bridger, thanks for your time. We appreciate
my pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.